GhastlyGarlic Episode 2. Echoes of Eternity, the Winchester Enigma. The morning sun struggled to pierce the thick veil of fog that cloaked the city, casting a gloomy pall over the streets as the school bus rumbled through. Among the students from Lincoln High School sat Alex Matthews, known for his mischievous streak and restless energy. He couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement at the prospect of exploring the infamous Winchester Mystery House. "Hey Alex, you ready to stir up some trouble in that haunted mansion?" Mark, his best friend, nudged him with a smirk. Alex grinned back, his hazel eyes twinkling. "You know it. Who knows what kind of mischief we'll find in there?" As the bus pulled up to the looming gates of the mansion, the students murmured with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The Winchester Mystery House stood like a silent sentinel, its dark windows hinting at the secrets within. Their tour guide, Mr. Thompson, greeted them with forced enthusiasm as they entered the mansion. He launched into a spiel about Sarah Winchester and the ghosts that supposedly haunted the house. But Alex's attention waned as Mr. Thompson droned on, his mind already wandering to the possibilities of exploration. Barely able to contain his excitement, Alex slipped away from the group at the first opportunity, his steps quickening as he ventured deeper into the mansion's dimly lit corridors. The air grew cooler, and shadows danced along the walls, but Alex felt only a rush of adrenaline. He turned a corner and stumbled upon a door radiating an eerie glow. Without hesitation, he pushed it open and stepped inside, the thrill of the unknown coursing through his veins. The room was dimly lit, filled with an array of strange artifacts and dusty relics. In the center stood a large ornate mirror, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. Alex approached the mirror, his curiosity piqued. He reached out a hand to touch it, but before his fingers made contact, the mirror began to ripple and distort, pulling him into its depths. As the swirling vortex enveloped him, Alex's senses were overwhelmed by a disorienting mix of colors and sensations. It felt like he was being pulled in every direction at once, his mind reeling from the chaos. When the swirling finally subsided, Alex found himself standing in a place that defied all logic. The sky above was a sickly shade of green, and the air was heavy with the stench of decay. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, and strange whispers echoed through the air. A sense of unease settled over Alex as he realized he was no longer in the Winchester Mystery House. This was something else entirely, a realm of darkness and uncertainty. But even in the face of his fear, Alex's mischievous spirit refused to be quelled. With a nervous laugh, he set off into the unknown, eager to explore this strange new world and uncover its secrets. The air was thick with a palpable tension, each step Alex took echoing loudly in the stillness. Shadows flickered and danced around him, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out for him. Strange whispers echoed through the air, their words unintelligible but filled with a sense of menace. As Alex ventured deeper into the darkened realm, the landscape shifted and changed around him. He found himself in a twisted forest, where gnarled trees loomed overhead like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. The ground beneath his feet was soft and squishy, as if it were composed of rotting flesh. Despite the overwhelming sense of dread that hung in the air, Alex pressed on, his curiosity driving him forward. He had always been drawn to the unknown, and now that he found himself in the midst of it, he couldn't resist the urge to explore. But with each step he took, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, pressing in on him from all sides like a suffocating blanket. It was as if the very air itself was alive, pulsing with a malevolent energy that sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, Alex heard a sound behind him, like the whisper of something moving through the shadows. He whirled around, but there was nothing there, only the twisted trees and the endless expanse of darkness. His heart pounding, Alex forced himself to continue forward, his eyes darting nervously from side to side. He had to find a way out of this nightmare, before it consumed him completely. As he trudged through the forest, Alex stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an eerie green light. In the center of the clearing stood a towering monolith, its surface etched with strange symbols that seemed to writhe and shift before his eyes. Intrigued, Alex approached the monolith cautiously, his senses on high alert. He reached out a hand to touch it, but as soon as his fingers made contact, a searing pain shot through his arm, causing him to recoil in shock. The monolith pulsed with a dark energy, its surface crackling with an otherworldly power. Alex could feel its malevolent presence reaching out to him, probing his mind with icy tendrils. With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, Alex realized that he was not alone in this realm. Whatever dwelled here was watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But Alex refused to give in to fear. With a defiant glare, he squared his shoulders and took a step closer to the monolith, his determination unwavering. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Alex stumbled backwards, his heart pounding in his chest as the monolith erupted in a blinding flash of light. When the light faded, Alex found himself standing in a different part of the forest, the monolith nowhere to be seen. Confusion swirled in his mind as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. But before he could gather his thoughts, a voice echoed through the darkness, sending a chill down his spine. "Who dares to trespass in my domain?" The voice boomed, its tone filled with malice. Alex spun around, his eyes wide with terror as he tried to locate the source of the voice. But all he could see was darkness, stretching out before him like an endless abyss. "I'm just a traveler," Alex stammered, his voice trembling with fear. "I mean no harm." Laughter echoed through the darkness, a cold, mocking sound that sent shivers down Alex's spine. "Foolish mortal," the voice mocked. "You're not sure what you found yourself in. You are but a tiny fleck in the vast scheme of things, and this realm is mine." Alex's heart hammered in his chest as he backed away from the voice, his mind racing with fear and uncertainty. He knew he had to find a way out of this nightmare, before it consumed him completely. But just as he turned to flee, a figure stepped out of the shadows before him, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It was like nothing Alex had ever seen before, a twisted, grotesque creature with jagged horns and leathery wings. Its mouth curled into a sinister smile as it advanced towards him, its claws outstretched. With a cry of terror, Alex turned and ran, his footsteps echoing loudly in the darkness. He could feel the creature's hot breath on his neck, its laughter ringing in his ears as it pursued him through the twisted forest. But no matter how fast he ran, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being hunted, that the darkness itself was closing in on him, ready to swallow him whole. With each step, the grotesque creature gained on Alex, its heavy footsteps thudding ominously behind him. Alex's breath came in ragged gasps as he sprinted through the twisted forest, the branches clawing at his clothes and the roots threatening to trip him up. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the darkness, sending a shiver down Alex's spine. He risked a glance over his shoulder and saw the creature's glowing eyes boring into him with an intensity that made his blood run cold. Panic surged within Alex as he realized he couldn't outrun the creature. It was gaining ground with every passing moment. Desperate for escape, he veered off the path, ducking behind a gnarled tree and holding his breath. The creature's heavy footsteps thundered past, its snarls echoing through the forest. Alex pressed himself against the tree, praying that it wouldn't spot him, but luck was not on his side. With a snarl of triumph, the creature turned back, its eyes narrowing as it caught sight of Alex's cowering form. Before Alex could react, the creature lunged forward, its claws slashing through the air. With a cry of pain, Alex stumbled backward, his back hitting the rough bark of the tree. The creature's claws closed around Alex's throat, its fetid breath washing over him as it leaned in close, its eyes gleaming with malice. Alex struggled against its iron grip, his vision swimming as darkness threatened to engulf him. "You thought you could escape, little one," the creature hissed, its voice dripping with venom. "But there is no escape from the darkness." With a cruel laugh, the creature tightened its grip, cutting off Alex's air supply. Stars danced before his eyes as he fought for breath, his strength ebbing away with each passing moment. Just when he thought he couldn't hold on any longer, a blinding light erupted from the darkness, engulfing the creature in a searing wave of energy. With a roar of pain, it released its grip on Alex and stumbled backward, its form dissolving into nothingness. Gasping for breath, Alex collapsed to the ground, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked up and saw a figure standing before him, bathed in the golden glow of the light. Relief flooded through him at the sight of someone, but before he could speak, he felt a sudden pressure closing in around him, like an invisible vice tightening around his body. Confusion furrowed his brow as he tried to move, but it was as if an invisible force held him in place. Panic clawed at his chest as he realized he was trapped, imprisoned within an unseen barrier. "What's happening?" Alex gasped, his voice trembling with fear. The figure before him, a sinister shadow in the dim light, chuckled darkly. "You're not going anywhere, little one," it sneered, its voice dripping with malice. Fear surged through Alex as he struggled against the invisible barrier, but it held fast, imprisoning him within its confines. He felt helpless, vulnerable, at the mercy of the creature that had trapped him. The creature's laughter echoed through the darkness, a cruel sound that sent shivers down Alex's spine. "Enjoy your stay," it taunted, its voice echoing with menace. Determined not to give up, Alex focused his mind, searching for any weakness in the barrier that held him captive. He pushed against it with all his strength, straining every muscle in his body, but no matter how hard he tried, the barrier held firm, refusing to yield to his efforts. Frustration gnawed at Alex's insides as he continued to push against the barrier, each attempt met with failure. He tried pounding on it with his fists, kicking at it with all his might, but it was as if the barrier were made of solid steel. Sweat poured down his brow as he gritted his teeth, refusing to give in to despair. He had to find a way out, had to break free from this prison before the creature caught up to him. With a growl of frustration, Alex stepped back, his mind racing as he considered his options. He couldn't break through the barrier with brute force alone, that much was clear. He needed to find another way, a weakness that he could exploit. As he pondered his next move, a realization dawned on him. The barrier wasn't just a physical obstacle, it was a manifestation of his own fear and doubt. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form, feeding off his insecurities and weaknesses. With this newfound understanding, Alex took a deep breath and closed his eyes, centering himself as he focused on the barrier before him. He visualized the energy swirling around him, the barrier pulsing with a dark, malevolent power. But as he concentrated, he felt something shift within him. It was as if a light had been lit in the darkness, banishing the shadows and filling him with a sense of inner strength. Drawing on this newfound resolve, Alex reached out with his mind, probing the barrier for any weakness, and to his surprise, he felt a flicker of resistance, a tiny crack in the darkness that he could exploit. With a surge of determination, Alex pressed against the crack, his mind focused and unwavering. He felt the barrier tremble under his touch, its grip weakening with each passing moment. And then, with a final burst of effort, the barrier shattered, crumbling away like ashes in the wind. Gasping for breath, Alex stumbled forward, his body trembling with exhaustion, but there was no time to rest. The creature was still out there, hunting him, and he needed to keep moving if he wanted to survive. With renewed determination, Alex pushed himself to his feet and sprinted through the forest, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the creature's presence looming behind him, its malevolent aura sending shivers down his spine. But he refused to look back. He had broken free from the darkness once, and he would do it again. He would fight with every ounce of strength he had, until the creature was defeated and he was safe once more. As he ran, the glimmer of sunlight grew brighter and brighter, beckoning him forward like a beacon of hope in the darkness. And with each step, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose fill him, driving him forward towards the light and the promise of freedom beyond. But the path to that light was fraught with peril, as the darkness seemed to coil around him, threatening to snuff out the last flicker of hope within his heart. Ghosts drifted through the mist, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They reached out with spectral hands, their fingers curling around Alex's throat, squeezing the life from him. Their moans filled the air, a chorus of anguish and despair that echoed through the darkness. But Alex refused to surrender to despair. With every ounce of strength he possessed, he fought back against the encroaching darkness, determined to find a way out of this nightmare. After what felt like an eternity, Alex stumbled upon a clearing where an ancient temple stood. Its crumbling walls loomed over him like silent sentinels, and a sense of foreboding settled over him like a shroud. Ignoring the chill that crept down his spine, Alex stepped inside the temple, his heart pounding with dread. The air was thick with the stench of death, and the walls seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. As he ventured deeper into the temple, Alex's footsteps echoed loudly in the darkness. The only sound was the drip of water from somewhere unseen, and the occasional creak of ancient stone. Suddenly, he heard a voice, faint and distant, echoing through the darkness. "Help me!" The voice sent a shiver down Alex's spine. It was filled with desperation and sorrow, and it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Heart pounding, Alex followed the sound, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls of the temple. The voice led him deeper and deeper into the darkness, until he reached a chamber bathed in an eerie blue light. There, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman, her form translucent and ethereal. Her eyes were hollow and filled with sorrow, and she reached out to him with trembling hands. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You have to help me." Alex's heart went out to the ghostly woman. He could feel her pain, her anguish, and he knew that he had to do something to help her. "What can I do?" he asked, his voice filled with compassion. The woman's eyes widened with hope as she spoke. "My name is Annie, and I am trapped in this place. I was killed by the same darkness that now haunts this place." As she spoke, the walls of the chamber seemed to shimmer and fade, revealing a scene of horror and chaos. Alex watched in horror as Annie recounted the events that had led to her death. "It was the curse of the Winchester rifle," she explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "My family built their fortune on the blood of others, and now we are cursed to wander these halls for eternity." Alex's blood ran cold at her words. He had heard of the curse of the Winchester rifle, how it was said to bring death and despair to all who possessed it, but he had never imagined that it could have such a profound effect on those who had been touched by its darkness. Determined to help Annie find peace, Alex searched the chamber for any sign of a way out. And then, he saw it, a shimmering portal that seemed to lead to another realm. With a sense of purpose, Alex stepped forward and reached out to the portal, his fingers brushing against its surface. To his surprise, it yielded to his touch, opening up before him like a gateway to another world. Without hesitation, Alex turned to Annie and extended his hand. "Come with me," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We can escape this place together." Annie hesitated for a moment, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She glanced back at the swirling darkness behind them, a shiver running down her spine. But then, with a nod, she took Alex's hand, her fingers intertwining with his. As they stepped forward together, a sense of hope loomed in Alex's chest. He could feel the warmth of Annie's hand in his, a reassuring presence in the midst of the darkness. But just as they were about to cross the threshold of the portal, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and before they could react, a massive hand reached out from the darkness and seized Annie by the arm. "Annie!" Alex cried out, his heart pounding with fear. With a desperate struggle, Annie tried to break free from the creature's grasp, her eyes wide with terror, but the creature's grip was like iron, unyielding and relentless. "Go, Alex, save yourself," Annie shouted, her voice filled with anguish, but Alex refused to abandon her. With a fierce determination, he lunged forward, his hands reaching out to pull Annie free from the creature's grasp. Their fingers brushed for a fleeting moment, and then, with a sudden surge of power, the creature wrenched Annie away from him. She screamed as she was pulled back into the darkness, her form disappearing into the swirling shadows. "No!" Alex cried out, his heart breaking as he watched Annie vanish before his eyes. And then, with a violent shove, he was pushed forward, tumbling headlong into the portal. The world spun around him in a blur of light and darkness, and for a moment, he felt like he was falling through an endless void. And then, with a jolt, he landed hard on the ground, the breath knocked from his lungs. He lay there for a moment, dazed and disoriented, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Slowly, he pushed himself to his feet, his head spinning as he surveyed his surroundings. He was standing in the midst of a vast, barren wasteland, the air thick with dust and ash. The landscape stretched out before him, desolate and lifeless, with jagged rocks jutting up from the cracked earth like the bones of some long-dead creature. With a heavy heart, Alex trudged forward, his boots kicking up clouds of dust with each step. The sun beat down mercilessly from above, casting harsh shadows across the barren landscape. As he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes were following his every move. He glanced over his shoulder, but there was nothing there, just the empty expanse of the wasteland stretching out behind him. With a determined set to his jaw, Alex continued on, his mind racing with thoughts of Annie and the promise he had made to her. He had to find a way to rescue her from the clutches of the darkness, no matter what it took. After what felt like hours of walking, Alex finally reached the base of the dark castle he had seen in the distance. Its walls loomed overhead, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Without hesitation, Alex began to climb, his fingers finding purchase on the rough stone as he pulled himself upward. The climb was treacherous, with loose rocks and crumbling ledges threatening to send him plummeting to the ground below. But Alex refused to give up. With every ounce of strength he possessed, he pushed himself onward, his heart pounding with determination. Finally, he reached the top of the castle's walls and peered over the edge. What he saw took his breath away. Before him stretched a vast, sprawling city, its buildings towering into the sky like monoliths of stone and steel. But there was something wrong about the city, something twisted and unnatural. The streets were empty, devoid of life, and a thick fog hung over everything like a shroud. And in the center of the city, Alex could see the dark spires of a massive temple, its blackened walls pulsating with an otherworldly energy. With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, Alex knew that this was where he had to go. He had to find Annie and put an end to the darkness that had ensnared them both. With a deep breath, Alex leapt from the castle walls and landed gracefully on the streets below. Without hesitation, he set off towards the temple, his footsteps echoing loudly in the empty streets. As he ventured deeper into the temple's depths, Alex encountered horrors beyond imagining. Dark creatures slithered through the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hunger, but Alex pressed on, driven by a determination born of desperation. He had to find a way out of this nightmare, no matter the cost. Finally, he reached a chamber at the heart of the temple, where a massive crystal pulsated with dark energy. It was the source of the horror that had engulfed him, the key to his salvation. With a trembling hand, Alex reached out and grasped the crystal, feeling its power surge through him. For a moment, he was consumed by agony, his very soul writhing in torment. But then, with a cry of defiance, he channeled that power, unleashing it in a burst of brilliant light. The darkness recoiled before him, its tendrils writhing in pain as they were banished back into the shadows. As the light faded, Alex collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. The temple around him began to crumble, its walls shaking with the force of his power. As the dust settled and the last echoes of the temple's destruction faded, Alex found himself standing amidst the ruins, his chest heaving with exhaustion. He surveyed the wreckage, a sense of relief flooding through him as he realized that the darkness that had haunted him for so long was finally gone. With a weary sigh, he turned away from the ruins and began the long journey back to the portal. The landscape around him seemed different now, somehow lighter and more hopeful. The sun shone down from above, casting a warm glow over the barren wasteland. As he walked, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the ghosts of the temple's victims trailing behind him. But there was nothing there, just the empty expanse of the wasteland stretching out behind him. Hours passed as Alex made his way back to the portal, his footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. And then, finally, he reached the spot where the portal had once stood, but to his horror, it was gone. Panic surged through him as he frantically searched the area, but there was no sign of the portal anywhere. It was as if it had never existed, leaving him stranded in this desolate wasteland with no way to return home. Despair threatened to consume him as he sank to his knees, the weight of his failure crushing him. He had come so far, fought so hard, only to be trapped in this nightmare with no hope of escape. But then, just as he was on the brink of giving up, he heard a faint sound in the distance. It was the sound of voices, echoing through the silence like a beacon of hope. Heart pounding, Alex scrambled to his feet and followed the sound, his footsteps quickening with each passing moment. And then, suddenly, he emerged from the wasteland and found himself standing before the grand gates of the Winchester Mystery House. Relief flooded through him as he realized that he was back where he started, back in the world he knew. But as he stepped through the gates, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The mansion before him seemed different somehow, older and more weathered than he remembered. And when he approached a group of people standing nearby and tried to speak to them, they simply stared at him with confusion and disbelief. "What's going on?" Alex asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. The people exchanged uneasy glances before one of them finally spoke. "Kid, do you realize what year it is?" Alex frowned, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of the question. "It's 2024, right?" But the people shook their heads, their expressions grim. No, kid, it's 2074. Shock coursed through Alex as he realized what they were saying. 50 years had passed since he had entered the portal, 50 years that he had spent trapped in that nightmare realm. But to everyone else, it was as if no time had passed at all. Unable to comprehend what had happened, Alex stumbled away from the Winchester Mystery House, his mind reeling with confusion and disbelief. He tried to tell his story to anyone who would listen, but no one believed him. To them, he was just a crazy kid with a wild imagination. Alone and adrift in a world that had moved on without him, Alex wandered the streets, haunted by the memories of the horrors he had faced. And though he tried to move on with his life, a part of him would always remain trapped in that dark and twisted realm, forever haunted by the echoes of the past. The end.
Thank you for joining this chilling journey. If you enjoyed exploring ghosts, mythical creatures, urban legends, and much more, please share and like this video. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications bell for more. See you soon, my brave explorers.